Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we are talking once again with Regina Phelps about issues related to cyber response. Okay, Regina, you left us on a cliffhanger in our last segment here.
And what was my question?
Take us away from the cliff, please.
So the key thing I think I want to make sure that I leave us with this initial part of our conversation is that when we brought all of those 5 or 6 people together, they need to come up with the top 5 things that they are going to do as a group. They did that, and now they're going to have to develop their checklist of what they would do in that next 24 hours. Just them, just me. Now, this goes back to what we started with in our initial conversation, Alex, is that many times people make assumptions, the big A word. And what happens is that I write my checklist in a vacuum, and you wrote your checklist in a vacuum.
Right.
What do you think could happen in that vacuum?
Oh, it's full of assumptions again.
Lots of assumptions.
Regina will do this. Regina will provide that. And meanwhile,
Right.
Regina has no idea that I need that from her.
Yes. And all of us, and I don't even know what you're doing. I think I know what you're doing. So I assume that, but I don't know. And so I base my plan on what I assume you're doing, and you make your plan on what you think I'm doing. And oh my goodness, it's a mess. So it's kind of like laying down cards. The first thing I do is I go around the room and we have a conversation. Okay, we're going to talk about exfiltration of data. That's one of your top 5. Great. Okay, my 5 or 6 or 7 people, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh no, no, I thought you, yeah. So we have that kind of messy conversation. That is so helpful because they've never asked and they don't know. So to me, just in the price of admission, that alone was so worth it. And what we do is we validate that in real time.
I guess that's kind of goes against what a lot of these leaders and representatives think. To move forward, they have to have this uncomfortable um, conversation, look behind the curtains, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
to really understand where everybody stands.
Right. And again, I think the A word is very prominent in this whole conversation. And there's a certain amount of anxiety. And the other thing, to be honest with you, Alex, is I find there's a lot of entities within the organization trying to build what I would call fiefdoms out of it. Well, I want to rise to the occasion. I want to be in charge. I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And so I find in some of my clients, there's a tug of war going on. Okay, well, who should be in charge? Well, I should be because I'm legal, and no, I should be, and I should tell you what you should be doing, and blah, blah, blah. And so what it does is that it gives you the opportunity to have that really painful and interesting conversation that I think is really important. And I think people need to have much more of that in order for us to have an ironed out response. Because otherwise, in my clients who have not done this, which we've only done it with a handful of people now, I sort of came up with this in the last 6 months. And oh my gosh, the ones that have not done something like this, it's a free-for-all. A free-for-all, right?
Just out of curiosity, how do they go about determining who would be in charge?
There's, again, I think there's a lot of pushing and pulling. And even in my clients who have a very well-established crisis management process, they assume, because it is cyber, not technology, cyber, that it is like a different animal. And therefore they become very deferential. And a lot of that, I think, because of the issues and fears around attorney-client privilege. And I understand that you're trying to keep a very small group of people managing something, but you can still manage it in the crisis methodology that we've done for years. It just, you just shrink the size of the group and you manage it appropriately. But I think it's amazing to me.
Just out of curiosity, have the ones that you have worked with so far on this,
Yep.
have they ended up with the same person or area in charge of a cyber event?
Well, that's a really great question because, when you think about who the person would be in charge, and let's say InfoSec or IT says, no, it should be me. Well, I think you and I both know this, and probably everybody understands this, is that the person who's got the crisis is their hair is on fire and they have a lot going on and they can only manage so much. They can't really lead a team to deal with all of the investigations and all the requirements and everything that we know from a legal and regulatory and privileged environment. And, oh, by the way, run the crisis management team for the company. Now, if it's only your little tiny part of the universe, meaning it just affects IT and nobody else, I can't think of many things where that would be the case, right? That you could maybe argue that logic because it would be a departmental problem. It never left the confines of that group. But how many cyber events are like that?
Exactly. Cyber is the entire organization,
Yes.
really.
And certainly maybe not in the first few hours, and maybe not even in the first day, but certainly if it continues beyond that, you're going to basically have everybody touched by it. So in that case, you really have to have the overarching crisis management process run it. Because frankly, when you think about it, the guy or gal who's running IT and InfoSec, they're like, their hair is on fire. They are just ready to blow up and they have to run their team, run the incident. They don't have time to worry about HR policies or procedures or what is happening in business continuity or what are we saying, in a communications, whatever.
Right.
They need to manage that process. And so if you have a well-established crisis management team and process, they can kind of manage the event as appropriate, and the IT InfoSec folks can do their magic in that area. And that's really, I think, the big issue.
I agree 100% with that approach. I've been saying that for a while now as well. I have a client doing some disaster recovery work for them, IT DRP, and they had a cyber plan put together in a team, and they have their crisis management approach. And I said, wait a minute, you've got things in one that aren't in the other. You have, and we've used that A word quite a few times today, assumptions between both. I said, and you've got the same person, if it's a cyber event, suddenly becomes the crisis manager or team lead. I forgot the exact name they call it, in charge of the entire crisis management team. And they're in charge of the security piece and the cyber piece. And they had things like roles and responsibilities, such as making hotel room bookings for their staff if they have to stay overnight. And I went, this makes no sense whatsoever.
Right, right.
And I said,
Aren't you
this
going to be doing
will
other
not
things?
work. I said, it might look great on paper, like all these things you're going to do. Wow. But there is only one person. You've got the same person assigned to it all,
Yep.
and you've got no communication between anybody. And so I said, this is not going to work, what you've got. I said, you're not, this is not well thought out. This is done, and you used the term, done in a vacuum.
No, it's so very funny because when I write crisis management programs and all the documentation that drives them, we develop broad general checklists for each one of the teams and members that are present. And that's again for the broad kind of crisis. But what we're talking about in a cyber event is really, I don't want like the IT people and all that doing everything that everybody else would be doing and running it by themselves, which is often what they're thinking about, right?
Yeah.
You want them to be able to reach across the chasm to the crisis management team, say, hey, I need 25 hotel rooms. I need food. I need, figure it out. And then you got your head back down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that funny need to sort of control everything, I think is fascinating to me. Bizarre.
Yeah, there was another example years ago, going back about 20 years ago when I worked for a company. They had a facility issue in Montreal. And what was happening is the subway that went underneath the building where they were, one of their offices, some cracks were found in the subway. Turned out didn't end up being a big thing, but they did close down the area. So they were wondering, well, who's in charge of this then, this event? and the facilities person is looking at an IT person, because most events end up being IT, but was looking at him, and the vice president or the representative of the IT part of the crisis management team was like, well, what the heck do I know about facilities? He goes, tell me about the data center. He goes, I can tell you. He goes, but I don't know what else to look at. And they finally figured out that, well, if it's a facilities issue, we need a facilities person to be a part of this team. And if it becomes a facilities issue, then those that don't need to be a part of it can then walk away and just be copied and be an
Because it's a
FYI.
departmental problem. It's a
Yeah, and
departmental.
then those that are focused on it can actually deal with it properly.
Mhm,
And they started to think that way, and the crisis management team started to evolve a lot better that
mhm,
way on different issues, rather
mhm.
than one person trying to manage everything and who had no idea what was going on.
Right, right. Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's the whole concept of a comprehensive crisis management process. You're activating who you need. And at the same time, you want to have a person in charge of the process who understands the methodology, how it all works. And this sort of gets to another key part, I think, which is who's actually in charge. So let's say you are going to evoke your crisis management team. Great, wonderful, I'm happy. And then there's sometimes a fight about, well, who should be in charge? Oh, it's an IT issue. The IT people should be the incident commander or crisis leader or whatever you want to call them. Okay, doesn't that person have things going on in their department? Aren't they kind of preoccupied? Are they the best person to lead a corporate wide event? No, they have stuff happening. Have you noticed? And
Yeah.
I think there's that natural thought, well, it's the IT problem, the crisis leader should be an IT person, or it's a facilities problem, it should be a facilities person. No. I always tell my clients, look, I'm only looking for a crisis leader that has 4 basic skills. I'm only looking for those 4 things. And they always say, okay, what are they? And I always say, okay, good, here's the list. You want to make sure, first of all, that they have good leadership skills. I mean, I want good leadership skills. I want people that can be motivating and that can really inspire people to work and have really great abilities to move the team. Not everybody can do that, Alex. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Yeah, there's not as many as you think.
Yeah, a lot of them, yeah, are in leadership positions that maybe, they should. That's another issue, though.
Yeah.
So first, I want leadership. The second one is I want somebody who's decisive, who will make a decision. Because a lot of times when there's, smoke flying everywhere and everybody's jumping up and down and oh my God, then I want to make sure that I've got somebody who can make the decision, right? Super important. The third thing is they have to have a broad understanding of the business. I don't care if they're an SME in anything, but they understand what the business does. And the fourth one, I think, is super important. It's a little more subjective, but it's really critical. And that is they have to be well respected by senior leadership. Because if they're not, and the bad thing has happened, what's going to happen is senior leadership walks into the room and they look at him like, who the heck is that guy? Or why are they in charge? No, 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 no. I want somebody who is got a good relationship with the senior people. They ideally, when we design the documentation for our clients, they're actually the ones that are approving that person. I want them to go like, yes, I want Alex, not like, who's Alex, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing too is that I don't know about you, but my clients don't activate every year, and sometimes they don't activate for several years in a row. Well, if you haven't done this except for exercises very often, you need to have somebody I don't want to have a different person every time something happens because it's not going to be a very good response. So I want consistency. Give me your top 1, 2, and 3. That's who I want. And I always want 3 deep because if we are into a shift change problem, I want to make sure that we've got people that are going to come in from midnight to, 8 a.m. or whatever the deal is. And so those are simple things. But again, most of my clients who've had a big cyber attack, they're fully activated for 45 plus days. That's going to burn you out and
Yeah.
you're going to make crappy decisions. And you just can't have that.
That is something that gets forgotten about.
Yeah.
quite often they may remember, let's go for Alex. Regina will be his backup. Well, that's great. However, we're both doing 12-hour shifts, or Regina's not available because,
I'm on
whoever's
vacation.
on vacation away. So it's just me. I'm working
Yep.
24 hours straight. I'm tired. And when I do get a backup, there's no handoff between the two so that that person can pick up and move,
How are
forward
your
with,
decisions after 24 hours,
yeah,
Alex?
and no recording of what those decisions are either.
Right.
They're made and people just go off and do them. And the question will come up, oh, what was the rationale behind that decision? Not
Right.
questioning it, just understanding where it came
Right.
from so that you
Right.
can move forward.
Right.
Oh, I don't know. Well,
Right. Well,
and then because you don't know, you end up making wrong decisions down the road because you
yep.
don't know the original rationale.
Yep.
And it never gets tracked.
Absolutely. And that goes, that sort of goes back to the whole issue related to things like well-designed exercises, well-designed documentation, making sure like, so for example, when we do trainings and materials that we develop, I always say, I want somebody capturing decisions. So it's like, excuse me, we just made a decision. I want to make sure, stop. Let's write that down. Are we all clear? Is this what we all said? Because you know what happens is that 25 people all say, oh, yeah, great, great. But then they all heard something different.
Yeah.
And then the person who wrote it down, I don't know what they heard, but, and so we never validate it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I literally make people stop, excuse me, we made a decision. Is this right?
Yep. When
So
I
we'll
did
think
a
about that.
webinar for the Resilience Think Tank just a few weeks ago, I talked about a RAID log: risk, issue, action, decisions, lessons learned, assumptions, parking lot, and you record all that stuff. And a decision is made. Sometimes that decision is related to an issue, or it's related to a risk or an action or something, so that you can link and understand, to your point, so that everyone has the same understanding of what that decision means.
Right. I find too in executive groups, there's always often a tendency to be a little shy about stopping the action. Excuse me, we just made a decision. Let's stop, make sure we got this right. It's like, well, they're the CEO. So
So
it's a process, right? We're just trying to be accurate here.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I get that a lot. Oh, you can't go talk to the CEO. Why? I'm not afraid of them. They're a person.
that's
I'm not
right.
afraid of them.
They probably won't bite me. At least I don't
Yeah.
think so.
I've walked down the hall at one place where a senior vice president on the C-suite team stepped out of his office, saw me coming down the hallway, and went, "Uh-oh, I don't owe you anything, do I?" I went, "No, you're fine."
That's guilt. They're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. What did I supposed to give that guy?
On that note, we've come to the end of our second segment. Today, we're talking with Regina Phelps about cyber response related issues, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.